Why do you feel that Israel's quote-unquote legal use of military force isn't labeled as terrorism? Because, I mean, the definition of terrorism is to create a fearful environment. And we all saw the news reports in Gaza, those people were definitely afraid. Why is Israel not labeled as a terrorist organization?
The U.S. State Department's definition of terrorism says that if a government does it, it's not terrorism. Literally.
Hamas is a government. Now, Hamas is a government now.
No, they govern Gaza, but they're not a government.
They were elected by the people.
They were elected for one section of the Palestinian government. They didn't win the presidential election. They won the parliamentary election. What?
What is the election? What I'm saying is it's based on recognition and who's granting it. I guess what I'm saying is the United States was against the
But she's bringing up the point. She's bringing up the point. Hamas is a government too, and they have the right to defend the people. That's what she's trying to get at.
Actually, I would change that position. Hamas is a government, but not according to the State Department.
But why does America have to dictate what's a government? Like, why is that opinion so important? Like, don't we as a people have an opinion as well?
Yeah, no, okay. I think Ed's making an important point that I want to back up in a particular way, right? I think his claim is, in fact, in large support of your claim, right? Which is that the way terrorism gets defined is often by those who have the power to define it in certain ways as opposed to others. And in that sense, right, I think the invocation of the State Department is good because I think what I said a few moments ago that I think using the term terrorism often obscures and cuts off discussion rather than moving past the term and seeing what's in play, right? And surely what was in play in the recent Gaza incursion, in which 1,464 Palestinians were killed, 960 of them were civilians. That we can and probably ought to label that terrorism, but I think what we ought to do more importantly is to understand the phenomenon, right? And the phenomenon is a massive attack against a civilian population. Just as, right, there have been other but smaller attacks by organizations, right, terrorist organizations, let us say labeled terrorist, Hamas against Israel. And there is, and I think what it's pointing to, I think there's a double standard in saying what constitutes terrorism and what not, and that double standard I think makes it difficult for us to see what's actually going on the ground, which you point out, I think rightfully, is the massive attack against the civilian population.
The massive attack against the civilian population, you just said already 2/3 of Palestinians that were killed were civilians because Israel was attacking Gaza. And you were saying before how they have these small incursions. I guess it wasn't because they were attacking the entire area, they were attacking the village, so proportionately they killed the same amount of people. I mean, they would have killed the same amount.
Yeah.
I, for one, did not say that they were not terrorists. I would say that they are a recognized government that in a number of times since 1948 have committed terrorist acts. And I would agree with you on that. On the other hand, at certain times, some of these acts have been out of defense. And the extent of them can in no way be justified, per se. But clearly, some of the effects clearly cross the line without question. I agree with you on that.
I was going to say, isn't Israel like one of America's really good allies? So if we have really strong allied bonds with Israel, we're not going to call one of our buddies in the Middle East and call them a terrorist group like their government, because that automatically that's a negative term. I mean, we have a war named after it, the War on Terror. So we wouldn't really just call it. I mean, it's probably one of the scenarios of the U.S. government.
What's going on right now there's a law or a resolution being put forth in attempting to identify the acts of Turkey in 1915 as basically genocide. Turkey is, in that area, one of our greatest allies. The question is, where do we draw the line as ally where, you know, where do we draw the line as actual truth? And is it time that we start to say, not necessarily, I would say, isolate, but say, enough, damn it. And we're not going to support this. However, we will support you if.
It's probably kind of like one of those things where you hear it's good to have good close friends, but it's better to keep your enemies closer. It's not necessarily the enemies, but they're potentially dangerous in a way, so you got to keep close tabs on them. So that's probably, that's kind of how I saw that. But terrorists or...
Well, I was just going to say that generally what determines the response is how big of an advocate the people have internationally. And probably why a lot of things that are done where people don't define as terrorism is because there's no advocate group that's going to stand up and defend or defend people who were aggrieved. And I think you see this a lot in the Middle East with Reform and South Korea and others. They don't have an effective advocate. No other Arab state really effectively advocates for it. And the other side is also true also. You never know what the truth is in a lot of situations until much later.
I'm not very knowledgeable of this subject at all. That's the reason I came. When Ty came the other day to class, I'm in Dr. Howard's geography class. I was very interested because I wanted to know both sides of the predicament. But you know, all of y'all talked about fighting and fighting, and all these questions have been directed towards the fighting and the hatred or whatever. But what was the initial reason or initial event that started it all?
Initial.
I consider myself a Christian, and I have that. From what I know from the Bible is that there's been fighting over there since the beginning of time, correct? And is it biblical, or is it?
I would say if I had to pick a beginning moment, I would say when the Roman Empire decided to run the Jews out of the area, and did so, and with them out, various other people were able to move in, and the Jews considered they had a right to reverse the process by which the Roman Empire had run them out. And people whose ancestors had been living there for more than 1,000 years, who'd had nothing to do with running the Jews out, did not feel comfortable with the idea of them losing their homes because somebody who lived there more than 1,000 years before, and who hadn't been run out by them, but by the Roman Empire, which was no longer around. And I would have to say, the first relevant event, I don't think it is relevant to the current struggles that the Jews had to conquer the place, coming in. Nobody of the pre-Jewish inhabitants is in the current fight. But I would have to write back to the Roman Empire running the Jews out. It's a long way back.
Yeah. So